Welcome to the Agents of Innovation podcast, where we feature conversations with entrepreneurs, philanthropists, and artists. Hello and welcome back to the Agents of Innovation podcast. I'm your host, Francisco Gonzalez, and I want to thank you for joining us again on another great episode with another guest coming from a state that I don't think I've had a guest from on this podcast. You know, more than 150 episodes in, we have Dennis Hulbert coming to us from Montana. Dennis, welcome to the Agents of Innovation podcast.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
Well, Dennis has quite a career, both in the U.S.D.A Forest Service as a Region 5 Aviation Officer. We're going to get into that. But he's also here to talk about his band that he's had for more than 33 years, and that is Machaira. And now that he is retired from his, full-time job, he'll be telling us about his passion project here of music. But before we get to Dennis's story, I want to remind you, especially if you're a first-time listener to the Agents of Innovation podcast, that you may be listening to this podcast maybe on Spotify or Apple or any of the other major listening platforms, but you could also be watching this on YouTube. So if you want to see us on YouTube, come on over. Just type in Agents of Innovation on the YouTube channel search bar, and you'll find us. And you can watch this podcast. There might even be some show and tell here, so we'll see. And then also, many of the guests on the podcast have also become featured innovators in the Fearless Journeys community, which I started a little over 3 years ago now. We do a lot of fun things in the community. We do some online live sessions where you can interact with people, but we also do a lot of in-person meetups. Recently, we've done dinners in Miami and Denver with some of our featured innovators and other members of the community that come together to be part of that. We also do some fun group trips, including to Guatemala, the Dominican Republic, Colombia, Argentina, Uruguay, and we're plotting some great adventures overseas to the other side of the Atlantic later this year, Norway, Morocco. Stay with us. Anyway, you could join us at fearlessjourneys.org, and if you want to join the free newsletter, fearlessjourneys.org/subscribe. So we look forward to connecting with you through the Fearless Journeys community. And thank you for, again, listening on the podcast platforms. Please make sure you subscribe if you're not already subscribed to this podcast. Give it a like, throw some comments. Let us know what you thought about this conversation with Dennis. And we look forward to hearing from you. So now back to Dennis Hulbert. Dennis, okay, so you're in Montana, Dennis, but I know you came from California. You're one of those many Californians that have branched out a little bit and got a little extra acreage over there in Montana. But I want to hear about the early career and the early life of Dennis Hulbert. Tell us a little bit how you got started.
All righty. So I grew up out in the mountains in Trinity County in California. And when you graduated from high school, you either went to work in the woods or for the Forest Service or the county. And so I thought firefighting would be cool. So the day I was out of high school, I went to work for the Forest Service and the U.S. Forest Service. And I spent 39 years there, and you reach a certain age and they kick you out. So I was really blessed. I went as low as you could go, started as a GS2, and actually went up to a GS14, which is, you only go one more step. And so I had a very successful career. And in my last 10 years, I managed the aviation program for fire suppression in California. And
very important, especially I have a brother that lived in California for 10 years. I know how important that is to put out those fires. So thank you for your service there, Dennis.
Well, thank you. But it was just such a rewarding career because I learned two things right off the bat. If you can manage yourself and your boss, you can do anything you want. And so you got to do those. So I always had good bosses and then just did a lot of really exciting entrepreneur kind of things within the agency. Worked in a night flying program, built simulators for training, just a lot of kind of cool things, which also gave me, and then when I retired, I had the blessing to be able to take that knowledge and be a consultant. So I've traveled the world, fought fire in Australia, Mexico, did a lot with the Canadian company that developed the C-130s and different air tankers. And so I was be able to carry that knowledge on for the last 10 years to do just a lot of fun, innovative things. And, and it really was. There was a lot of cool stuff. One of the things I'll quickly touch on, because it means you're talking about innovators, was the whole time I was in the Forest Service, the retardant, the red stuff that comes out of air tankers, has been monopolized by one company, and they control that around the world. And as an American taxpayer, I always didn't think that was a good thing. So I made it my quest to invent and come up with an alternative to that one company. And 20 something over 24 years, the monopoly's been there, and 20 something companies about that have tried and failed. Well, I succeeded. I actually was able to accomplish that goal and have a company that was on the qualified products list outside the one monopoly. I mean, and they do a great job. I'm not putting them down, but it's just, as we know, competition is good. And then again, it's one of those things. If you can manage yourself and your boss, you can do about anything you want. So
what was the product or service that you offered there?
It's a fire alternative to the fire retardant that's out there. It's the chemicals, and it required chemists and financial people, and I'm not a business guy, and so I learned a lot of lessons, because the company that I was up against sold for almost $2 billion. So I thought I'd wake up with a horse head in my bed half the time. They weren't happy about it, but we accomplished it, and so that's one of the reasons I can live on a ranch in Montana now. So life is good.
Yeah, that's great. Well, congratulations to you for doing that. And I think that's, first of all, I love the phrase you've used there a couple times there. Learn how to manage yourself and manage your boss. So that's interesting. But also, I think, even though you worked, in the government and, sort of in a system, and it could be a corporation, it could be just a large organization like a government, like the Forestry Service, you found ways to be innovative and entrepreneurial. And, one of the things, I like to say after having so many conversations with great entrepreneurs is I think it's really tough to be an entrepreneur, in the sense that we think of an entrepreneur as starting and running a business. That's really tough, and very few people can do that. But I do think that everyone can learn the characteristics and the traits of the entrepreneur and maybe be more entrepreneurial wherever they are. And it seems like you were entrepreneurial within that forestry system, and also seeing this monopoly that this company had on this kind of product, that you could provide something different, maybe something better, but something that could sort of upset and disrupt the market, in a sense that they had a dominance over.
Yeah, and the key was, both in the government and out of the government, is be a good team leader and surround yourself with people that are smarter than you in the different subjects. I had one of the best chemists in the business we had two. I had a finance guy. I mean, I don't know about business and finances. I consider myself a dirt thrower. I put fires out there as a hot shot and a fire truck driver and all those things. So in my early career, but I always was blessed with the fact I found people that knew how to do that and wanted to work with me on it. So it was a team effort, but in both places, in the government and outside the government.
So let me ask you, you grew up in California, and what inspired you to go into the Forestry Service? Was it particularly an interest to put out fires, or something broader? What was that first inspiration?
I mean, I went to work from the day I was out of high school. So, I mean, it was just like I wanted a job, and I didn't want to work for my dad anymore. And so I quickly took the first job that came along, and that intrigued me. I mean, I liked the outdoors. I grew up in the mountains, and so I figured firefighting would be a cool thing to do, and it was. I mean, I saw the world on the end of a shovel. It was wonderful. I could tell 100 stories on being on crews out in the woods, and close calls and exciting things, and meet neat people, and it just was a really wonderful career.
And you also mentioned that you were an aviation officer within that, representing California, the Pacific Islands. What did that involve? Any interesting stories there?
There's probably a lot, but the aviation component in the U.S. Forest Service, most of it's contracted out, so it requires a lot of diversity, contracting, standards. It's really risky, unsafe business. In fact, I was a regional aviation safety officer for 3 years, and at the time I took that job on, the Forest Service, there was 3 pilots a year being fatally injured in aircraft accidents, and so it was and it's big business, big money, and big media. So you get all that stuff together, and it's a big job. But I was, I just came up through the ranks and managed helicopters as a young man, and then started going to school at nights and stuff, and learned aircraft accident investigation and other things around that subject matter. It wasn't like I had a huge passion. I mean, I became a pilot because I had to be a safety officer, but I scared myself. I don't consider myself a professional pilot. I just had to have the license. But I managed pilots and I managed people. I know.
But you did fly.
Yeah, I can fly, but I'm not a professional pilot. I had professional
Well,
pilots, and those guys, my hat's off to them, because you think of an air tanker, a big old giant aircraft. The air tankers, again, are the ones that drop the fire retardants on the fires, and they fly. When you become a pilot, they say, don't fly at low elevations, don't fly in low visibility, don't fly with your overweight. Well, we're all those factors. The aircraft is low, slow, can't see, and at the maximum weight to maximize efficiency. So those guys have a really risky job, and they do great work. And the agency's gotten way better. There's way less fatalities than there used to be because the aircraft and the pilots have stringent training and equipment.
Those are some fearless people. Speaking of fearless journeys, but well, you mentioned you did this work because it was the job you got out of high school, and you just continued to, I guess, move up the ladder and do different things within that, and you had a 39-year career. That's really impressive. But for the past 33 years, you've also had another passion that you've pursued, and that is music. And you have this band Machaira. So you've actually had the music group for 33 years. I don't know how long you've been playing music, but tell us, how did the learning and playing music start and develop, and how it evolved to what you're doing today?
I grew up in a family that, music was always on, and so it was around me. And it was an important thing in my life just because I had an appreciation for it. And when I was a senior in high school, I lived out in the mountains, and there was only 6 kids in my junior class. And it just so happens it was back in the late 60s, and the teachers there, it was public school, but they were kind of alternative hippie type lifestyle thing. And one of them had been a guitar player, and actually played a little bit with Sly and the Family Stone. Another one was a drummer from the Texas Playboys, and another one was a jazz pianist from Columbia. Just coincidental. And they kind of came to school and said, well, if you don't want to learn this, then we'll teach you music. And so I started off, and I changed my life. I mean, I started playing music, and that became my passion. And so I've played in bands, as a young man. And, early on, I didn't for a while just because I was more career oriented. But I started back up 35 years ago, and mainly it was a Christian oriented band. We were doing as Christians, we weren't playing praise music or anything, but we were more of evangelistical outreach. We've toured Russia. We've done all kinds of different things. And
did you tour Russia during the Cold War?
No, right afterwards. Okay. I did fight fire in Russia. I was sent over there, not to deviate, but it's another great little story. I was sent over there as an American diplomat right after Perestroika to work with Aviation, which is the Russian fire service. And I lived with the Russians and smoke jumpers there for 6 weeks and fought fires in Siberia. And then I went back with my band, and we toured Russia later on. So I kind of like Russia just because I had those experiences. But anyway, the band was just something that I did when I wasn't fighting forest fire, and always was really blessed with playing with musicians that were always, again, surround yourself with good people. I always surrounded myself with musicians that were better than me. So, hey, you're real good. No, I can play 12 songs real good, but and so it's been great, and it's been quite an evolution. There's been over 40 people that can probably claim they've been in this band. We've made 9 CDs. We've toured the world. We were in a Hollywood movie. We've had guest artists like guys from the Tower of Power and the Doobie Brothers and Brent Bourgeois, and just a lot of different musicians that have played on our recordings. The testimony is we've been doing it 33 years, and I've never charged a penny. I've done over 300 free outreaches. We do a lot of goodwill things for communities and try to do it as a nonprofit. It's always operated as a nonprofit. So again, I counted it up the other day, and I've done over 300 street kind of fairs or community events or church parking lots or, wherever. So that's been the evolution of the band. But in the last year or so, I've decided to turn it into try to take it to the next level, whatever that means. And so we went to Studio D in Sausalito and had a world-class producer who did Ringo Starr and Van Morrison and Huey Lewis and everything. And I brought on a new member, a gentleman named Marc Cooper, who's a world-class guitar player. And we kind of took it to the next level with the intent now that we're working with a media company that's entrepreneurs that are trying to figure out how to make it to where musicians can make a living, because most of them can't. And so we're working the internet and a lot of those kind of things, which I don't know enough about it to tell you what's happening, but I know they're pretty smart guys out of the industry that's working on it, and they're beta testing this. And we just finished a new recording that we're real proud of, and we're knocking on the door to Austin City Limits and shows and different things. I think we can. When people hear us, I think they'll be pleasantly surprised. And we're an 11-person band. We got a 3-piece horn section. We've got 3 backup singers that are phenomenal, and just 2 guitar players, a great keyboard player that got his first gold record when he was like 19. And so everybody's seasoned. We're all around at third base. A lot of us are 70, so there's a shelf life here, but we're kind of going to see what happens.
And is it more of a like gospel, blues, folk? Where would you put the genre?
It's a gospel-y blues, although we're not, the earlier recordings, we're pretty much, a Christian gospel band, but we're not so much now. I mean, we're all Christians, but I'm not pushing it. The music is a real variety, with horns, and it's kind of, we're all old, so sounds like it's from the past a bit, but it's fresh. I mean, it's exciting.
Well, you mentioned some of the people who have played on your record, on various records, like from the, let's see, Marc Russo from the Doobie Brothers, Mick Gillette from Tower of Power, Michael Hossack also from the Doobie Brothers, Brent Bourgeois from Bourgeois Tagg, Scott Josh from Merle Haggard, Keith Edwards from Ricky Skaggs, to name a few here. You also mentioned a movie. What movie were you featured in?
We were in a I can remember another thing I need to tell you, but we were in a movie. It really didn't go nowhere. It was called Chores, and it starred Luke Goss. And so we were actors in it. We were the band in the thing, and it was one of those failed attempts of Hollywood. But we were in it, and it got made. Were
you playing your own music or somebody else's music?
We played our own. It just had a little clip in the beginning, and then we were undercover cops, and it was a fun experience. A friend of ours made it that we knew, and it was, it had Luke Goss. He's a major actor in it, and he was in several major films, but it was fun. But we are working on, here's one. We are working on a reality TV show. And I'll send you some copies. I think you'll get a kick out of them. We have 3 backup singers, 2 black gals and a white gal, Cheryl, we call Blondie. She's the typical Hollywood blondie, and the other 2 are kind of, from down in the city. And so it creates a really entertaining dynamic. And so we're going to possibly call it the Go Girls of Machaira. We've made a pilot. We have interest from Bravo and the Learning Channel and several things. In fact, there are a lot of interest, although we got to fund the thing. But anyway, I think we will get it off the ground, and I'm excited to introduce that real soon here.
So you said 11, 12 people in the band?
11 people in the band, yeah.
11 people in the band. That's a lot.
That's a lot.
You primarily play in California? Do you tour?
Yeah, we always have been, but that's changing real fast. We came up here to Montana once last year. That was a blast. But again, I've never thought that broad before. But my entrepreneurship is kicking in, and we're thinking big. So I think we can get away with it. I mean, we're a nobody band. Nobody's heard of us. They can't even pronounce us half the time. But all my musicians are really seasoned. I got my horn section is a couple guys that have been teaching school all their life, band teachers and stuff. And so we got quite a mix of people, and it makes for quite a show. I mean, we call our latest album the Rock and Roll Circus. And there's
this is the new album coming out?
Yep, there it is. It's
this is why you need to be on YouTube. So that's an actual physical album, like a record
Yeah,
on a turntable.
we got that.
That looks
And
really
you
cool.
can
I
go
like
the
the
old-fashioned way and
image.
see,
Yeah,
I have
what's inside what's inside the tent? It looks like there's something.
well, you're gonna have to. I'll send you our video. You're gonna have to watch the video because we did a really high end video called Rock and Roll Circus, and we brought in Leon Patillo to do a duet with my lead guitar player Mark Cooper. Leon Patillo was the singer of Santana, and so he's
Oh,
a good
wow.
friend of ours. We're his backup band occasionally, and so we brought him in just to give us a little more diversity. And so he sings on it, which is cool, and he's in the music video. He's had
That's great. So I noticed that you showed me two things. You showed me an old school record album that you're putting out, but you also what was that you showed me? Was that a flash drive?
No, okay. I showed you the old album. We have a CD. Look, so
Okay.
I had my props.
That's the CD.
And here's the latest and greatest. People don't even know how to use this thing, but it's called a business card flash drive, and it's a flash drive that pops out, and then you stick it in your computer or your car because nobody buys CDs because I don't even have a CD player in my car. But this just goes in the little, flash drive place. And it has all our music. It has 3 or 4 music videos on it, and all our music, and a bunch of pictures. And it's so I think this is the new medium for the.
That's interesting. That could
music.
be a new medium for musicians, but I could actually see that being a medium for businesses too. Like maybe you have some little 2-minute trailer about your
because they've been given
work.
flash. I go to trade shows and they give you these guys. But it's the same thing, but it's a little cooler looking and it has
built into your business card. That's kind of cool.
Built into the little business card.
Well, on that note, I mean, so you're doing all these things. So tell me a little bit about this. I don't know, you may not know all the details, but you mentioned, because it's a real struggle out there. I mean, I've had a lot of musicians on this podcast over the years. I view them all as entrepreneurs because they're out there hustling.
Yeah.
They're marketing. They're doing all the things they need to do. They're selling themselves, their talent. And music is a lot harder to sell than probably anything else because you just don't know. It could be good, but you just don't know what's going to hit, what's going to time, who's the market, how you're going to shift what you're providing, what your talent is to some obscure market. Why is a particular person or artist like a number one selling artist and another one you'd never heard of, right? It's like a lot of these random factors. And when you look at even all sorts of musicians that have made it, they've always had some lucky break along the way, or just something that they did something different at just right time, right place, and that kind of broke it for them. So it's a real, anyway, the industry is a real struggle. But you also mentioned, some innovative company that you're working with that maybe you're one of the beta tests for them. Tell me a little bit about what problem are they trying to solve?
Yeah.
And how do you think they're going to do it?
Well, I'm a little on thin ice here. I'm not sure totally their whole vision, but they approached us. They're friends of my guitar players, and there's several guys out of the industry, mainly on the tech side. They invent guitar pedal wah-wah things and sound things and all the other stuff that accompany the music industry. And they're music lovers, and they saw bands struggling, and obviously CD sales don't happen anymore, and album sales, and then all the other factors I think everybody's kind of aware of it, and bands aren't making any money on streaming either. That's kind of ripping off the musician too. And so where do they go? So the bands that are making it, in other words, paying the bills, I have no illusions of grandeur. I just like to pay the bills and keep
just don't want to lose money. Yeah,
is through sales of what they call product, T-shirts, cups, these kind of things, whatever. So that and touring. But how do you get your name out there? And so I could post. We made a really high-end music video called Rock and Roll Circus, and I posted it on Facebook, and you can get oh, good, we got 450 hits, So these guys are looking at all the metrics and the dynamics of all the different mediums on the computers, and analyzing them and trying to figure out ways to take advantage of that world. And then in the same light, they're looking at what we're working on now. In fact, we have a big beta test coming up on Friday, is you're going to be able to subscribe to us on a small monthly fee, and then you can have all of our shows live on your computer. So we're looking at switchology and all the factors and the cameras and everything to where we'll do live shows, podcast stuff like you're doing, do the live shows. So become a fan, subscribe to the thing, and then they're doing all the computer technology to bring it all together to where they'll manage it. And then they're also looking at products to where it's product on demand around the world, not just here. So if you want to buy a t-shirt or a cup or a CD or whatever, they can make that locally without having a big warehouse full of stuff and then supply that to the user. So they're going to manage our website, the marketing, all the stuff I don't have a clue about doing.
That's good. Yeah. I mean, it helps you to focus on what you do best and what you love to do, actually play the music and help. And then you get these folks that are hired to take care of all those other logistical things.
Yeah. And they're just going to take a cut out of the profits. I mean, I think, I mean, it's like a win-win-win for me. I can just keep playing music and all of a sudden there might be a revenue stream, and 11 people, and some of the people in my band need to make a living. So
yeah. What you you don't have to name all 10 of them, but what do the other people in your band do? Is this something they do on the side, or are they full-time musicians? What kind of things do they do?
That's a great question. I'd like to answer that. Again, we're very diverse all the ways from, just some of them just turned 40 to where our oldest member is 74, I think. So, and I'm 72. So, I mean, there's a whole gap of age here. And again, we have a shelf life, so I'm pushing hard to get this out there. But as long as we can stay alive. But anyway, so my main guitar player, music director, is a gentleman named Marc Cooper, and he has a long pedigree of being they even make a Marc Cooper guitar after him, and he's played with Joe Walsh, he's played with every major, Stevie Vai, all the major guitar players, and has he's directed the Philharmonic Orchestra in the Philippines. He's been to 72 countries. So he's the real deal, and he kind of changed the whole feel of the band. I brought him in 2 years ago to do just this, and he's done that quite well. So he's a virtuoso that plays everything quite well, and he's mainly known for his guitar skills. He's endorsed a lot of products, and people use that kind of caliber. The other guitar player, a gentleman that I've just did ministry with and off and on for the last 30 years, had other bands that my band had played with, and he's a music teacher, teaches guitar for a living, and lives in Sacramento, and plays in other bands, and just kind of a musician around town. But he's a great guitar player. I have a keyboard player that's his name is Peter Michael Richardson, and he had a gold record by the time he was 19. He toured with all kinds of different bands, made a lot of recordings, and he spent 10 or 20 years of his life at Nashville or someplace like that doing jingles. He wrote jingles. He's the guy that did the California Raisins and Go-Go Tires, and you still get him started. Wow. He'll start singing jingles and you can't get him.
I don't want to sing any of those. You just got me started.
The cool part about him, he's a true B3 player, organ and piano, and he writes a lot of music, and he's a great guy. And then I have a new drummer, a lady drummer, that's gonna really excited to get her on our TV show because she's phenomenal. She has like 50 drum students in town there, and is a professional drummer that we're real excited to get. Her name's Karen, and then we've got 3 backup singers, and quite diverse. They're 2 of them are just natural gifted, and then there's Blondie, who's kind of like they're so different that it makes it work. It's really cool. And again, their interaction and their stuff for the TV show and live too is real dynamic. They're characters, so they make the whole band really fun and really bring the R&B kind of a feel to it, and that whole black gospel thing that is prevalent in a lot of the rock and roll music that we listen to. So it's really brought a great dynamic. And I got 3 horn players, sax, trumpet, and trombone. And my sax player's a bebop guy from Chicago. and he's teaches school at a little Christian school band, and he's just a phenomenal player. Though the guy practices like 3 or 4 hours a day. I mean, that's all he
Wow.
does. He's kind of got OCD on the horn, which is good. He's like he's the guy. And then it's funny because I wanted to expand the band, and one day I'm driving and I saw a car wash. I pulled in to wash my car for the local high school band, and the guy walked up to me and said, "Well, thanks for supporting the band." And I said, "Well, I need more horn players." And he goes, "What are you talking about?" And he goes, "Well," I said, "I told him I'm in this band." He goes, "Well, I'm a horn player." And I go, "Well, you want to try out?" He goes, "Yeah." And then he brought his wife, and his wife plays trombone. And so I got 2 for 1. I got a trombone player and a trumpet player. They're both
plus a car
excellent.
wash, right?
Yeah, at the car wash. So that's how you get band members. Just
You
get
got a
car
3 for
wash
1.
once in a while.
It's a 3 for 1.
Yeah.
Well, let me tell you. Let me ask you. You've got so the name is called Machaira, M-A-C-H-A-R. Sorry, M-A-C-H-A-I-R-A. Machaira. Where did you come up with that? What does it stand for? What's the
That's a
meaning
Greek
behind
word
it?
for sword, and it's actually a biblical term where it says in Hebrews 4:12, it says God's word is sharper than a dual-edged sword. And so in the early days, we were the Christians that were going to start this little band, and so somebody says, "Well, I'd like to call it that." It's funny because we almost even thought about changing it recently because people stumble on it, but it's a cool word. In fact, there's a baby born that she named it after the band. Her name's Machaira. But
Oh wow! Was
it's
that a fan or somebody in your band?
a fan that saw us
Wow.
play once. In fact, she thought she'd never see us again, and years later I ran into her just coincidentally. It was a weird circumstance. She goes, "I named my kid after you guys." Whoa! So we've seen the kid grow up, and
That's amazing.
anyway. But Machaira, seriously, we were playing once, went back in the 20 years ago or so, and they thought it was the Macarena. They bought the CD, and then they gave it back. This is not the Macarena. Or I've had people show up at our concerts, and they go, "Well, we came to see the next band. We thought you were a mariachi band. You guys are great. I wish we had it." So people struggle with it, but there it is. It's a name.
Everything from the Macarena to a mariachi band. That's what
Yeah,
Machaira could get confused with.
Needs sword.
Yes. Yeah, well, this is really great. I mean, just to see what you've been doing, and your new album comes out here in around February, March.
Yeah, I think in March we're going to try to do a big release thing and put on a major concert that you can watch live, hopefully. And if and then we're off and running. So we're kind of building up to that point.
So if people want to find you, how do they find you?
You can Google Machaira.com and find us. We're still in the process of developing a good website, and the new company is going to do that because we have our old stuff that was ministry oriented that we're trying to phase out. And Mark Cooper has some stuff on his site. I'll be honest with you, we're lacking in that area, but you can find us online. If you Google Machaira on YouTube, we've been making videos for a long time, so there's videos on there and stuff.
Yeah, I did Google you earlier. I Googled Machaira.
Yeah.
A bunch of videos came up.
Yeah.
So that looked good. And anyway, so that's great. So people can be on the lookout for the new album coming out here in March, and then you also if they go to your website machaira.com, can they find when you're touring?
Yeah, we'll have all that on there. It'll be like a normal band. We're just not there yet. Doesn't have it. We don't have anything scheduled right now, to be honest with you.
And also, let me just ask you: if someone listens to your music and they say, "Hey, I'd love to have that band come down and play in Florida or Texas or wherever," can they make that happen for a price?
Yes, they can. In fact, I'd love to go to Florida. I was thinking you're there, so give me an invite. I'm going to send you a package, so you'll be my guy.
All right, we'll do that. Well, I have some friends.
Help me be an entrepreneur.
Well, I have a lot of friends who like to host bands, and so who knows? Maybe one's listening right now and says, "Hey, I'd like to get that band down to Florida and play, or maybe be part of a tour that you're on."
The new album's called Rock and Roll Circus, and the featured song on it's called Rock and Roll Circus, and it features Leon Patilla from Santana, and has a great video accompanying it. We're excited about that. And the other song we did, we're real excited about. One of our gal sings it, is that old Elvis Presley song called "Saved," and it's been done by several bands and covered, but we did it very uniquely. We slowed it way down and then it speeds up at the end, and we're real proud of that song too. I think
Well,
people
did
will.
Cheryl tell you? I don't think she knows. I'm a huge Elvis Presley fan, so I love that
Yeah,
you dropped Elvis into our conversation here. And
good.
I had about, gosh, I guess it's been about 2 years ago now. It's hard to believe. There's a young man named Matt Stone. He lives not too far from me here in South Florida, and he is. When I had him on the podcast, I believe he was 20 years old. I met him when he was like 19 or 20. He's now 21 or so. He's married, has a kid now. But he is an Elvis Presley tribute artist and is doing
Yeah,
very well. In fact, I ran into him about 2 months ago, and he said to me, Francisco, we need to have a new podcast. I said, why? You're 21. Like, what have we learned in 2 years? He said, no. He goes, so many people come to my shows, and they say that they saw him on the podcast because when they Google Matt Stone, he actually does really well on YouTube. Like
yeah,
he's got a phenomenal social media presence. And so when they go in and they type in Matt Stone as Elvis, my interview comes up with him. And he said, it's been almost 2 years. Actually, it's been more than 2 years now since that interview. And he said, there's so much new material that I need to update for people that find us. So I thought that was funny, but maybe one day your paths will cross with Matt Stone as Elvis,
yeah.
because he's always got. Sometimes he's just out there on his own like a solo person, but when he does these with a full band, it's just so incredible. So I could see maybe some crossover with your band, maybe throwing in that song "Saved" by Elvis. That would be cool.
Yeah, that would be fun.
So
That
I'll
would
have
be
to
fun.
connect you with Matt. I'm sure he'll be out there crossing paths on the tour. But yeah, this has been a lot of fun. Let me ask you one other question here before we go, because we talked a little bit before about this, being an entrepreneur within an organization, but you also, while you were in the Forestry Service, you started this band on the side. So
Yeah,
actually, Elvis kind of did the opposite, right?
yeah,
he he was a musician, and then he went into the service.
yeah.
But there are a lot of people that do this, right? That they've got side projects going on. How did you manage, full-time job? I'm sure you got other things going on in your life, like your family, with doing, music on the side and continuing to develop yourself as a good musician, but also to work with other members of the band, find new members of the band, and try to get your music out there.
Um, I didn't have any real formula. I just did it. I luckily, because when you schedule concerts and stuff, you can't, and you can't schedule forest fires. The forest fire would always, I'm gone on a fire. I have to cancel. I just was really blessed, lucky or something. I never missed a concert. Eventually I got high enough in the government to where I could kind of like, I was my own boss. So I'd sneak off and come back. The fire's burning. Hey, where's Dennis? I don't know. I'm out playing a gig. Go back, but, um, that only happened once, but, it just seemed to work out. I always made it usually, we would practice one night a week, for years. And that was always a schedule that happened for a long period of time. So the rehearsal schedules, you just worked them around. And if you were gone, you missed that week and you catch up the next week. So practice and then, trying to balance the two. And it just happened. I just kept them as both of them priorities in my life and made it work.
Well, I think you said a couple things there that people should really be paying attention to. First of all, you made them priorities. I think, a lot of times people will say, "Oh, I don't have time for this," or "I don't have time for that." Well, you have time for what you prioritize, right? Like you will make time. And then the other thing you kind of said at the beginning of that part of the answer there was, you said, "I just did it." And I think that's something that I've noticed from a lot of entrepreneurs. They're doers.
Yeah.
That's one of the key characteristics. And you are a doer, but you're also a player. You're a musician, and you're bringing a lot of joy to yourself, I'm sure, but also to other people through the music. And we'll be looking out for your new album here, the Rock and Roll Circus,
Yep.
coming out in March. And so that's great. Dennis, is there any final things that we should address or talk about, or any comments that you want to leave us with?
Um, I'll just go back to my own thing. Learn how to manage yourself. The key to success for me, both in the Forest Service and in the music industry and in the entrepreneur of starting a business is, accept people for who they are and just be liked. People didn't mind working for me because I wanted to be the boss that everybody liked. And so, there's just so much personality, and your demeanor has so much to do with, you want people around to hang out with you, and then you find the good ones, and those are the ones you partnership with. But I think just human factors is just because, as we know, human factors can make or break a band, a family, anything, and so you got to work at that.
Yeah, well, those are good words of wisdom to leave us with there. Really learn how to work with others, right? Be kind,
Yeah.
be a nice person, be likable. These are
That's
all
it.
traits, that people, we talk about all these kind of entrepreneurial traits, but people kind of forget about these personality traits. You don't want to be someone that people fear, dislike, nervous around, anxious around. You want to be somebody
Yeah.
people want to be around, likable. And
Yep.
and I think managing yourself, managing your time, that's good advice as well.
Thank you.
Well, Dennis, thank you for being on the Agents of Innovation podcast, and thank you for being an agent of innovation yourself. We will put everything about you and your band, Machaira, in the show notes so people can find you.
Thanks.
And we just want to say thank you for your time today.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate it. It's fun.